Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's webinar. I'm afraid you've just got me this week. I'm going to be covering getting started with marketing planning, how to use the A10 Marketing Framework, which is something that I wrote 2 years ago. While we're waiting for a few more people to join, please do write something in the chat. There's a few people there that I recognised. Armini and Jackie have just joined, but please do put a message in the chat. I'm going to launch the first poll. While I'm just getting that ready, if you also notice that in the top right hand side you've got handouts, I have actually loaded both the slides and the full A10 booklet for you to download as a PDF. We do have some hard copies in the office, but once we get back to the office, as soon as we start having some events again, we'll be able to issue them. So let's have a look at this poll then. I'm going to read out the question. You're allowed to answer more than once because sometimes, it might apply to more than one thing. So what is your involvement with creating or using business and marketing plans? I do not have any involvement yet. I receive a business plan from my manager or the board. I receive the marketing plan from someone else. I'm responsible for creating and contributing towards the business plan. I'm responsible for creating or contributing towards the marketing plan. I have to create a marketing plan for the first time, and I regularly create marketing plans, and I'm looking for some new ideas. So it looks like most of you are actually responsible for planning in some form. That's the majority of the answers. So far, we've got 27% say they're responsible for contributing towards the marketing plan. So that probably means you're either a marketing manager or a marketing director or an owner. So obviously you're very welcome. We've got about a quarter of you saying I'm responsible for or contributing towards the marketing plan. Of course, you could be both, but we're hoping that most people here are actively involved or likely to be getting involved with marketing planning. That's the whole point of the presentation today. Quite a few of you have got to create a marketing plan for the first time, which is really interesting because I am going to show you some different frameworks that you can use. And then there's about 16% of you that are creating marketing plans on a regular basis and are looking for some new ideas. So hopefully that helps. I'll just check that everybody's okay in the chat. I won't be able to answer any questions during the presentation unless something really jumps out at me, because normally Jess is, as I said, my co-host Jess is usually on the call. But I will be able to answer questions at the end and we can stick around. You will be getting a copy of the recording later on as well. So let's just dive straight in. I'm a bit croaky this morning, so I'm just going to grab a drink of water. So I do apologise for that. Okay, so just a little bit to get going, a little bit about me. Most of you will know me or have been on a presentation before. So I'm Ann Stanley. I'm the Managing Director and founder of Anicca Digital. I actually came to Leicester University to do science 40 years ago. I'm very proud of coming from Leicester, although it's not very nice being in the lockdown at the moment. On the left-hand side, you can see our lovely office, which is an old converted pub. Which is looking very tired and very lonely at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to getting back a few days a week come sort of August. This is most of our team. And then this is a little bit about some of my personal life, although there is the Drum Awards there in the middle. You can see me with my husband, my daughter and my 2 grandchildren who I miss terribly. I'm missing going to gigs, and I'm also very pleased that Lewis Hamilton is smashing it in the Formula One. I've also got 2 giant Maine Coon cats. So if any of you are into cats, they're about that. If you looked at them now, they'd probably be about that size combined. They're huge now. They're a couple of years old. This is some of the clients that we work with. We work with about 60% B2B and sort of lead generation service clients, and about 40% e-commerce. We've run a couple of nice new clients recently, including the Jury Channel, and we're just about to start off a big project with the NHS. So we are, although we have obviously suffered a little bit with the COVID situation, which I know many of you have as well, we're starting to crawl out of that situation, and it's great that everybody is starting to contact us for new projects. And it'll be good to get all the team back to working full time again, hopefully in September. So what I'm going to start off with doing is doing a little bit of an introduction to market strategy and planning. So this is a bit of the theory behind it. So I apologise to all you seasoned marketeers there that have done your CIM qualifications, etc. I am going to cover some stuff you might be already familiar with. So I'm going to get going by just explaining the different elements of a business and marketing plan, just to get the fundamentals for the newbies amongst you. And I'm going to start off with the concept of what is strategy. Now, strategy to me is like going on a journey. You really do need to know where you're starting from and where you're going to understand the way that you get there. And if you think about the current situation is where you are now and where you want to go to is your objective, your strategy is your journey that you take from one to the other. And just to give you a little bit of an example, if I'm based in Leicester and I want to go to a meeting in Nottingham, I will drive because it's reasonably convenient. It's not too far. I'll be able to park. And then if I wanted to go to a meeting in London, this is the good old days, of course, everything's done virtually now. But I would catch the train because it's a lot more convenient. So my strategy of how I get there is very different depending on where I am, in this case, both the same, but where I want to get to. So we sort of need to understand both of these when we're building our plan. And the other thing about this is if we can make our objectives SMART, that's going to help us. I'll explain what that is in a minute. That's going to make sure that we've got something that's quantifiable so we can actually measure how we're getting on and the different milestones as we go through even the different stops on our way. Okay, so the business planning process takes our current situation and our business objectives, and we come together and create a business strategy. Now, when we are creating a business plan, we have to think about the individual department plans that are involved in this. And I use something called FIMO, which I blatantly stole from Robert Craven, who's one of the consultants that we use with Andreas Stalik, who help us with our business planning of Anicca. And we use FIMO as our sort of strategy here, or our structure. So that's finance, marketing, and operations. Now, there are others. You could look at technology and innovation, which we do. So that becomes FIMOT. But I'm going to just focus today on finance. But some of the marketing frameworks, such as SOSTAC, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, you can apply to all of these. But of course, today, I'm really going to be focusing on marketing. However, you do need to think about the fact that there's lots of interdependencies between these. And if you're going to put a marketing plan together, you're going to need to have a budget, and you're also going to need to have operations to help you with the actual implementation. Okay, so as marketeers, we tend to use lots of models and frameworks. So it's slightly different with marketing planning, and because we use something called the marketing mix, which interestingly has been around since the 60s. And the marketing mix consists of the 7 Ps. Now, people that are new to marketing often think that marketing is just the promotional element of it. And I know that my marketing colleagues that have studied this get quite upset about this, because actually it covers pretty much every element of the way that the customer interacts with the business. So we're going to be talking about products, price, the place, which is basically the distribution and how you get the product to market, whether this is a store, a catalogue, or your website, or a salesperson. The standard and classic promotional business comms, the physical evidence, which is things like the packaging or the even things like the store and the point of sale, the process that's involved, and of course, we can't do anything without the people. But we're not only talking about the marketing team, we're talking about the delivery people as well. So within a marketing strategy, you do need to consider all these aspects. But I guess for me, the bit that I'm going to talk about most, because some of you are going to only be responsible for that, is the promotional mix, or this element of it. And if we want to start looking at that, we start to use another model, which most of you will be familiar as paid, owned, and media. So this is the promotional mix, and we're going to be talking about, and this can apply to both online and offline, or traditional or digital. Of course, these terms get interchanged. And then above line and below the line, which is sort of the term that's come from traditional advertising about things like advertising with things like broadcast, TV, media, press, etc. And then things like trade shows and PR, which is more personalized and below the line. Now, most of you will understand what paid media is. That's the advertising that we do. But for the people that are not familiar with owned and earned, I'll just quickly explain what they are. So owned media is the stuff that you can control yourself. So in the good old days, this would be your brochures and your leaflet. And now, of course, it includes all your digital assets, such as your website, your social media profiles that you create and write, and then also things like your email, which of course you can send and control. Now, earned media is where you're at the mercy of other people, and this can be slightly managed by you in the sense that you can send out press releases, but you aren't really able to control what people say about you. And this can go really well and you can get a viral campaign, or it can go really badly and you can get very bad publicity. Now, earned media also includes other sort of channels as well as PR. And we're talking about both sort of traditional press in the paper and digital PR. You've also got the social media comments and the sort of stuff that you deal with regard to community management. So that's customer feedback. And then you've also got things like review sites and testimonials, as well as new things like thought leadership. And I will lay all these out in my next slide. The final thing that I wanted to add into the mix, because we don't usually do it in that order, we usually sort of say owned, and paid media, but we changed it around to say poet when we added the idea of technical media into this. And the reason we've included technical media or technology is that it also includes a lot of the new things that we're looking at now, like artificial intelligence, voice search, the virtual assistants, the Internet of Things, all those sorts of things. But also, there's a lot of technology that supports marketing, and some of these channels are a bit of a hybrid. So you've got new programmatic TV, which isn't really a traditional broadcast advertising technique, because it combines TV with programmatic and audience targeting. So you can see that there's the concept of just paid, owned, and earned media is a little bit naive when we have to deal with so much around audiences, tracking, analytics, reporting, etc. So I've tried to express this in the next slide, where I've grouped these together, and I haven't covered everything in this. There is a more extensive list depending on what industry you're in and whether you're trying to generate leads. We call that lead generation, or whether you're trying to do e-commerce sales. But I broadly put the paid media into the following categories. So I've included paid search, which is your Google ads, your Bing ads; paid display, which is banner and video ads that you see everywhere; paid social, which is the ones that you see in the feed. Then we've got marketplaces, and this is including things like eBay, Amazon, and we're not only talking about the actual listings where you pay commission, but they do also have very extensive ad platforms now, which have been growing very fast. In addition to that, we've got things like affiliates and shopping channels. This is the CSE, and those are very e-commerce specific. Then we come over to owned media, and most of you will be doing and completely familiar with all of these. So we've got search engine optimization, which is getting your website found in the search results, and we call this the organic or the free results. We got content marketing, which is usually on your own site, or content that you can put on things like forums or third-party blogs where you control them. You've got the social media platforms where you actually add your content, directories, etc. And then you've got things like email and marketing automation, which again is all content that you can control. And notice this is very, very much around content. You can also include things like offline media, like your leaflets in here. And you could also include things like your events and trade shows over here. So if it's a free event that you manage, that could go in owned media. So don't think of the promotional mix purely as digital marketing, although I have done in this case. There is a whole load of examples relating to traditional media. And I think if you're going to get your marketing right, you've got to have a combination of both. The reason I'm focusing on digital debt today is because a lot of you are going to be limited to what you can do with regards to physical events, although we are hoping, and the guys from Trinity Mirror and Edge will echo me, we're hoping that we're going to be able to do physical events, live events very, very soon. But also, you know, even being able to get into store for some people are difficult. So there's much more of an emphasis at the moment of even if you've traditionally run a store, of getting an online presence to compensate for the fact that so many people are buying online now. Now, the earned one is probably the most difficult to manage and control because you are at the whim of other people. You can seed content, and you can also, in some cases, pay to have things like advertorials and thought leaders and influencers to actually write about you. So there is quite an overlap between all these different, you know, we often see this as sort of an overlapping Venn diagram. But this is often the most powerful stuff. So things like getting links back to your site is a really important element in SEO. So if people write about you and link back to you, then Google regards that as a trust factor. But also users regard this as a trust factor as well, and they're more likely to believe the content that other people have written about you. So this is things like, you know, your PR, and the social media comments and reviews, etc., and testimonials, because they're more likely to believe that than the stuff you say about yourself. So, you know, it's much, you know, if you're going into a situation and somebody says, hey, you're brilliant at what you do, then getting a review is really, really powerful. So one of the things I am going to do at the end of this presentation for the very first time is I'm actually going to ask you guys to, if you've enjoyed our webinars and you like the content we're spreading about, is to give us a review. So I'm going to give you a link to our reviews.co.uk, and I'm going to try and take advantage of our lovely audience that we've got here, and actually request a review for people. So don't be scared to do that. You know, ask for reviews, ask for testimonials, produce case studies, because all of that stuff is going to mean that users are going to trust you more and they're going to value you more. And trust is probably the most important part of that customer relationship. First of all, when you're bringing on a new prospect, but in order to retain them and actually have a long-term partnership. Now, I'm quickly going to cover a couple of the technology ones, including voice search, chatbots, Internet of Things, AI, which is artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Most of the advertising platforms that we use include machine learning. It's pretty common already. And you'll notice that more and more websites have got chatbots. We actually have built a chatbot. We're just waiting for our new site to go live, and we'll be adding that to it. So again, this is all things that you can do to improve your relationship and actually try and make you more effective. But then when you add things like programmatic TV, such as Google AdSmart, again, you know, does that come in under paid, or does that come under a technology? It's all part of this sort of the technology of how you distribute media and the technology of how you track and create audiences and feeds, etc. Another a very important part of trying to put a business plan together, and you can see why it's starting to get complicated now, because you've got POET, you've got the different stages of the consumer journey, which I'll just quickly go through. You've got the 7 Ps. You know, trying to write a business, a marketing plan with all these different elements, it's really difficult to create a structure. So what we need to be aware of is that our users and our target market are going to be at different stages of their user journey, and we're going to need different strategies at each of these stages. So I think it's really important that whatever framework you use includes these different elements, because what we're going to do to get brand awareness and educating or getting the new prospects to consider our brand and our products is going to be very different to what we're going to do if we've already got a customer and we're trying to retain them or we want them to shout about our services. A lot of the focus of what we do is about what we call client acquisition, which is really getting clients to your website for the first time and also to your store. And then that's part of this education consideration process where they may come back many times through many channels and many devices, even different locations, before they actually convert. Another element of building the business plan is these conversions, and I will define what a conversion is because I know I do get asked this occasionally. And if you do have any questions about the terminology, please chuck them into the chat. But a conversion is an action, and an action can occur on your website. So that could be somebody filling in a form or actually buying. But it could be and we tend to call those macro conversions because those are the things we really want. But we can also get micro conversions, which could be something like downloading a white paper or filling in a form to get a brochure. And those are really useful because they usually indicate somebody's got a higher level of engagement and they're actually on their journey and they are going to consider you. So a lot of the marketing that we do, and the A10 Marketing Framework is a really good example of that, is to give them reasons to register with you. We call it gated content. So we can then at a later stage contact them through email and actually start to communicate with them, encouraging them to join a webinar, which is obviously what we're doing here. And then you can send content and information to them so that if they're not yet ready to convert, which of course some people won't be, we can warm them up or nurture them until they're actually done their research and they're ready to go with you. And because you've been in their constant sites, then they'll go with you because they now trust you. Another element of conversions, which is really important, is that they don't always happen on your website, which is very easy to track. They might have open over the phone, so we might need to consider some call tracking technology. But also the conversion path can be very wibbly wobbly, which means that they could go across multiple devices and multiple channels. So we need to sort of understand the attribution of the original contact point, the first click, to the last click, what they did last before they converted. And another thing that is particularly important for a lot of our clients is the conversion actually happens offline and it takes place through the actions of the sales team. And that can happen many, many months later or weeks later. And there's a big disconnect between what happened on the website or the original source of the lead or the call and what happens with the sale later on, which is offline. Now, fortunately, we can use CRM, customer relationship management software, such as Salesforce and HubSpot, Soho, etc., to track that sale. We actually use SharpSpring, and that's the conversation for next week. I'm going to be talking about marketing automation. But a lot of the work that we do is tracking that lead right from the beginning, all the way through this process to the sale, which can happen offline. And that's one of the big aspects of the sort of work that we do. So when you're putting your marketing plan together, you can't just talk about brand awareness and getting people to your site. You've got to look at all of these different stages in the sales funnel. And if you have very high levels of churn because your clients aren't very loyal and they just defect to somebody else as soon as they bought this product, they maybe just buy on price, then you've also got to look at strategy around retention as well. And a lot of the work that we've done in previous talks is about creating audiences from your CRM system. For example, uploading all the people that contract's going to expire this month, and then doing things like audience targeting in Facebook to make sure that they get the message and link that with your email marketing. So we tend to look at campaigns in three ways. They tend to be prospecting campaigns, conversion campaigns, which often include remarketing, and the retention strategies. So don't just think that you've got to worry about getting traffic to your site. There's all these other elements you need to consider as well. So fortunately, there's a load of planning frameworks that have been built to help you put this planning process together. Because as I mentioned, it's quite complicated to pull all these different elements together. So the first one I want to give credit to is PR Smith, which is Paul Smith. I've actually met Paul at a CIM conference And his model can be applied to pretty much everything. And that's why I like it. And I've used it for literally years. And it's called SOSTAC. And that stands for situation or situation analysis, objective, strategy, tactics, action, and control. I'm not going to delve too much into the detail of this actual planning model, but if you are perhaps needing something that you can apply to your operations or finance, you might want to consider this one because it's particularly useful. Another great CIM speaker and talker and writer is Dave Chaffee, and he has a brilliant website called Smart Insights. There's loads of free resources on here. I do use it a lot. There's also a membership side as well, and they've come up with RACE, which is reach, act, convert, and engage. Now, although I really like a lot of his stuff, I don't particularly like this model. I do apologize, Dave. And the reason I don't like it is that you've got sort of different stages for services and e-commerce, and it's called sort of decision making and purchasing, and I find that a little bit confusing, and I don't think it works for everything. Also, I don't think it's broad enough in the sense that it doesn't cover things like the assets, the analysis, the assessment, and some of the other things which is included in the A10 model. So I'm going to hop onto that and explain a little bit more about the A10 Marketing Framework. Now, the A10 Marketing Framework was something that I developed nearly 2 years ago now. It was part of an evolution of where I started to talk about assets and audience and analysis in some of my proposals, and then we added awareness. And it sort of evolved, and I was actually asked to write a book, which it proved to be an impossible task while managing grandchildren at weekends and managing a business during the week. So I ended up writing this booklet as the first of a series of 10. And the actual A10 framework is effectively a 10-step process that you can use to analyze, plan, implement, and manage your comms strategy. So we are really talking about the promotional mix, the marketing comms. It doesn't really cover product development. It doesn't really cover pricing strategies, but it does cover all of the elements in that particular part of the 7 Ps. Now, this is the overall steps in the plan, and I will go through them in a little bit more detail. We haven't actually got time to go through everything. It takes a full day to go through the whole plan. And if you are going to do the whole marketing plan, I would typically allow 5 days to build a marketing plan. But I know in the past it's taken me a lot longer, particularly if I have to start creating personas. I have to start doing a lot of analysis of my previous sales. And particularly if I haven't got any objectives set by anybody else. So I have to sort of combine business and marketing objectives through that process. The marketing plan itself still can take you 5 days, depending on what you've already got. But that's if you do everything completely and thoroughly. You can use this as a sort of more simple framework and produce something in about a day. But if you do that, I suggest you've probably not done the analysis stage in enough detail. Our current audits that we do for clients as part of our business development process take us 2 days. So you can see that there's at least 2 days worth of analysis before you actually put the rest of the strategy together. So let me just go through the steps. So the first stage is that analysis. And actually what we've got is we repeat the whole of this process as sort of a mini analysis of each of the stages. And in the actual booklet, I do have a copy here, which I'll wave in front of the camera. So it's actually a physical booklet with lots of content. You can see there's lots of content in here. I don't know how well this is working on camera. The PDF, of course, is a virtual version of that, which has the advantage that all the links work. But as I said, when we get back to the office and start running our webinars and things again live and our training courses, we will send some of these out. And if any of you are desperate to have a hard copy, I can talk to you afterwards about, if you send us sort of an envelope with your address and some stamps and that, we can get those out to you when we get back into the office, of course. The next stage is to set your aims or objectives. This is really part of the standard analyze where you are and where you want to go to part of the plan. And then the next thing we do is we look at your target audiences. And if you haven't already created personas, we can do that. There's lots and lots of data in digital, particularly in LinkedIn if you're B2B, but also in analytics and in Facebook. So we need to understand who your audiences are, who you think your audiences are, who your actual audiences are, and who's coming to your website and your digital profiles. So you might have quite a gap between your perceptions and the actual real situation. And this is really powerful because we can then go on later on to produce things like lookalike audiences. Then we have to look at all your assets. This is a big section. This usually involves looking at your website, your social profiles, and also all your creative ads that you're going to produce to use in your campaigns. Then we usually look at an awareness campaign. This is how we're going to get, and the prospecting, this is how we're going to get in front of new people. And we're then going to talk about acquisition, which is getting them to your website or your store. We're then going to talk about things around conversion and trying to improve your conversion rates either in your site or elsewhere. And then we're going to have some strategies around attention and retention. I really had trouble trying to come up with an A to do with customer service and retention. So that's why I used attention. But because nobody knows what I mean, I've used it here in both contexts. Then you can look at advocacy, and this includes things like reviews and thought leadership and other people talking about you a little bit here. And then finally assessing the effectiveness of the plans and the performance, and then feeding that back into a cycle. Most planning is done on a 3-year basis and then with some sort of quarterly review, because your timetables and your objectives, although you might have long-term objectives around 3 years, you're going to have year objectives and quarterly objectives. Now, when you're putting this planning process together, you will be trying to decide what channels and what mix of channels you need. And somebody asked me that question yesterday, and I sort of likened it to a recipe. You know, if you've got eggs, flour, and butter, you can make a huge amount of different things. You know, it could be a Victoria sponge, it could be shortbread, it could be pancakes. So you can see that when we're trying to choose channels, we're going to have to mix and match them together. And I'm afraid there's quite a lot of experience in that, which is why so many people use agencies, particularly in the strategy stage, because it's very difficult to know exactly what mix of channels to use. And we have been trying to give you some of the information on that as we've been doing the webinars. Now, somebody has asked a good question about how the plans adapt. And yes, absolutely, they do need to adapt. And a lot of people are maybe planning for the first time because of COVID. Somebody else has also asked about the slides being available. Yes, the slides and the A10 are available at top right. If you click into handouts, you'll be able to download them from there. Okay, so I'm going to go in and explain a little bit more about why we came up with a plan and actually what's involved in it. And for me, it's because it's so flexible. It covers both online and offline, and it's really good if you're doing an integrated multi-channel, and you know, particularly if you're a clicks and mortar business. It does work with businesses of all size, irrespective of your budget, and it's about getting the basics right. And it can be used to be flexible, even if digital marketing technology changes. So, you know, you can mix, you can, as you adapt and bring in new channels, you can include them. It does take 5 to 10 days to complete, and that's because of the analytics that is required. But if you've ever done a business plan, you really should be allowing that amount of time anyway, or a marketing plan. It is a lot longer than people realize. Once you've done one, it's a lot quicker the next time because you've got your structure and you've got a lot of data, and then you just add into it. And one of the most important things is having the necessary diagnostic tools. So I do make some recommendations of some free tools. A lot of we spend about 5% of our income on paid tools, particularly things like SEO Monitor, Optimizer for PPC management, you know, loads of tools that really do help us with our everyday job. I'm not expecting you necessarily to do some of those. For example, SEMrush has got a free tool which would be really helpful, and I do recommend some of those later. So how does it all fit into the planning process? Well, this is really the overall plan. And if I was doing this as a slide, I'd build it one at a time. But effectively what happens is you get your business plan from the board, or you might be involved in creating it. That generates your business objectives, which allows you to create your marketing plan, your finance plan, and your operations plan. Your marketing plan, again, you review your current situations and your marketing objectives, which of course are determined by your business objectives. So if your business objective at the moment is to survive because of COVID, then your marketing objectives is to keep hold of your existing clients, get them reactivated, and try and do as much free marketing as possible. Whereas your business objective is growth, and to do that rapidly, then your marketing objectives might be all about growth in traffic, in leads, in sales, and then you're probably going to use paid media when you come down to the actual marketing mix. We're then going to have a marketing strategy, which we're going to focus on the proms part of it, but please don't ignore these other elements. When you start to put this A10 plan together, you will see how they overlap with this, and you should have individual strategies and ideas about all of these. We're then going to use our poet, and then that then filters down to the A10 part of this, which is actually how you write the plan. So we sort of work bottom up. We actually write each of the 10 steps. We get the analysis. We include the different channels. We include the different elements of the sales funnel. And we use the A10 as the structure for the document, because it's much, much easier to do it that way round. And having done marketing planning for the last 25 years or more, I can assure you this is the easiest way I've ever found to do it. Okay, so this is just a reiteration of the steps that we've done. So I'm now going to pick a couple of those out. And the first one I'm going to do is the analysis stage. Now, this is a cheat sheet which you get if you've actually got the physical document. It's basically it's an A4 slide, and I'm just picked out bits from it. So what you notice is that we're looking at this from the different stages of the A10. So we're following the same structure, which means we can then address them in part of the strategy. But what I want you to think about is what you want to understand from each of these different stages. And here on the right, we've got some examples of the analysis that you carry out. So this is sometimes done from your perspective, and sometimes it's done from your client's perspective. And that's really important, because the trouble with writing business plans, we tend to focus very, very much on the business and the product and the service, and we forget that marketing's all about the customers. So in the first one, I'm trying to answer questions, and you see all the way down on the left, these are the questions that we're trying to answer. And these are the ways that we find the information to answer those questions. So it's quite a simple approach, but you can see there's a huge amount to it. And I'm not going to go through all of it. I just pick out a couple of examples. So who are my target audience? Who are my current audience? And who visits my site and my social media profiles? So this is where you go and look at the analysis of your CRM. You look at your personas, and you actually go and look at the data. The next one is going to be things like, what do people think about my website? What do they think of my social presence? What do they think of my ads? And what toolkit do you need? So this all comes under assets, and you can see this is a massive section, and a lot of work has to go into this to get this right. We're going to use a lot of analytics here. We're going to try and understand things like the bounce rate, the session durations, the what the degree of returning visitors are, what happens on your social presence, what's the size of your social presence, how often do you actually post compared with your competitors, and then what's your actual assets and what tools are you using to do that. So you can see this section really covers about 50% of the actual auditing process. These are the others, so awareness, acquisition, etc. So this is where you go and look at things like your conversion rates on your website, what traffic you get, where the traffic comes from. So if you actually go through each of these and you produce one of our full audits, which, you know, takes us, as I said, typically if we were doing one of these audits, we'd charge about £5,000 to produce an audit. I'm not trying to sell that, but I'm trying to tell you how much work's involved in that. That would take us typically three to 4 days, and we would have to present it as well. So that gives you an idea of the amount of time and investment involved in this. And the advantage that we've got, of course, is we know exactly what tools to do, and we know how to benchmark your performance compared with other sites. So this is difficult for people for the first time because they've got nothing to benchmark. And sometimes you just have to benchmark against yourself, or if you can, your competitors. Okay, so that's a really important part of that process. So I just wanted to leap into audiences because I can't really set your objectives for you or your aims for you. So I just wanted to show you some of the tools that we use. So this is Google Analytics. And what I've done here is I've actually created what's called a segment. So this is Google Analytics here, and I've gone into the section on the audience, and this is the interest section and demographics. And this is all of my users that come to my site, and you can see it by age and sex. And then this is the actual customers. So I've created what's called a customers based on who I've got my sales. And although I get lots of people of different age groups, and this sort of reflects the sort of natural population of each of these age groups, what I notice is my 25 to my 34-year-olds are buying most of my product. So you can see that I probably need to attract more people. Now, if I understand the demographics, and also I can do this with the audience, I then can use audience targeting to buy and get in front of that audience by using awareness and display ads. So this is Google's version, and this is the in-market audiences, and this gives you some of the idea at the top level of the type of audiences that you can buy based on people's behavior and what they're doing online. Okay, so the next one I want to go into is the demographic data. Now, what you have to do here is you have to go and add the LinkedIn Insight Pixel onto your site, create a campaign manager account. You don't have to spend any money. And as soon as you get 300 users to your site, you'll start to see across these different drop-down lists, lots of information about who's coming to your site. Now, this is really powerful because we realize we've got a lot of techie people coming to our site because of all the blog content. And actually, we wanted more people that were directors and marketing directors. So you can see the types of job title of the people that come and use my site. So it's really important to change the content on the site to attract the right audience. You can also create personas. So this is the example of Mary, the marketing manager or the marketing director. I'm sure there's many Marys in the audience today. And this is about the requirements, the pains and gains, the solution that you will offer, and the sorts of, and instead of focusing on just things like the age and location and job title, which we do need in audience targeting, what you need to sort of think about is what's the problem you're going to solve and how you're going to solve it, and what things are going to personally benefit them. You know, are they looking to hit their objectives so they get a pay rise, and how are you going to partner with them? Or is there skill shortages and things, or any of your service and products can help them to appear to do their job properly? Now, I did say we hadn't got time to go through all the steps, so this is just a few highlights from the book. So the first thing I wanted to highlight was all the free site graders and diagnostic tools that are available. So these are lots of links to lots of sites where you can put your URL and get some information. They're usually used as sort of clickbait to get you to sign up to their lists, and they vary a lot. The other thing about them is they don't always give you the same answer. So I definitely recommend that you look at a few of them. And if you start to see them all flagging up with errors, then you need to speak to a specialist. I don't know if Suk's on the call today, but he can help with technical SEO inquiries. And we are still offering a 1-hour consultancy until the end of September from our technical guys. So do try these out, but be a little cautious with them. We've also done a similar blog article on social media analysis tools that you might want to go and look up on our blog. There's also some software. These are sort of full software. Some of them offer a freemium model, which means you get a free package. I do recommend you look at SEMrush. It's got a lot of functionality in the free model. Unfortunately, for an agency, it's a little bit more expensive than some of the other tools that we use. We use SEO Monitor, which is a paid. They do have a 14-day trial, which we really love, but we pay for that. We also use here, we use a couple of others on here, but they tend to be more specialist agency tools. But there's a whole load of browser plugins and things you can try. So go and look at the tools that, that took me about 2 days in research just to find this lot. And I do think that there might be 1 or 2 links that might, because this is now 2 years old. If you can't find the links, they do go out of, they do stop using them. So do check the dates on the blogs, make sure that they are up to date. This is some theory around how to increase leads and sales. This is sort of all the different elements of that. So we do talk about that in the book. And also we look at some of the reporting and the analysis. And if you've been on Ed's presentation on Data Studio, this will be familiar with you. And we do have a dashboard for £500, I think it is, which you can actually link all your accounts to and actually create your own dashboards. So this is sort of like a template of 11 pages. So again, if anybody's interested in that, if you email at me at the end, I can put you in touch with Ed, who's just had a baby girl, for anybody that knows Ed. Now, that's all I'm going to cover from the A10 a booklet for today. But one of the things you need to be aware of is when you're actually doing your plan, you're often having to convince somebody else about the merits of your ideas. So I wanted to bring some juicy stats to you. I have updated this, so this is the most recent information. And the reason I'm including this is because I think it's really important, A, that you've got something to benchmark yourself against, but also an idea of what information's out there, and there's absolutely tons. I just got a few bits. There is more in the booklet, but because the booklet was produced a year ago, I've got some updated links in here, but also some updated data as well. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was traffic by source to website. Now, these are different types of websites covering mainly retail, so mainly consumer sites. They don't include B2C sites and service sites, comparison sites, etc. But there is some data out there. It's a bit more patchy. But my colleagues over in Wolfgang Digital, which are over in Dublin, they produce this every year. So this is the most up-to-date data. I actually take their data and put it into a nice graph because it's easier to understand. And what you notice is how high organic SEO is. So people often say, oh, social media, it's so important, I'm going to do everything through social. If you actually look what people are doing, most people are still going to Google to search. And you see in some sectors, the second one is, so online only, it's actually paid social, which is the dominant one. Now, when you add the SEO part together, which is usually Google and about 10% Bing, you normally find you're over 70%. So you can see retail stores, that's a good 65 there. You add those together. So you usually find that the SEO, which is obviously mainly Google, is typically 60 to 70%. And actually the data shows that for services, it's even higher. So the only exception really is travel. And travel is very reliant on third-party booking sites. And also it's quite reliant on things like email as well. So you can see that that's coming in. This is direct, sorry, that can be quite high. And the bigger the brand, the more direct traffic you have, because people tend to just know what your domain name is and they come directly. Now, the one that always surprised people is how low social is. So I don't think any of these, which is the solid green one, go over 10%. Now, we only get higher than 10%, and we do, yes, you've got multi-channel there, so that's clicks and mortar. And actually, if you look at last year's data, they were all under 10%. The only ones that are really high is when you're doing a lot of paid social advertising. And this can be both for an e-commerce site and a lead generation site. So, for example, we've the latest case study that we're doing for a software company for engineering is over 70% from paid LinkedIn. So you can have very high levels of social, but it's not coming from organic. And I will explain the reason for that in a minute when I actually give you some data relating to social media. But I think you can guess why. A lot of the advertising on social media is encouraging people to interact within the platform and actually not go over to the site. This is a little bit about the importance of mobile, and obviously with consumers, it's becoming more and more important. There was this about a year ago, you'd say 2/3 of your traffic is coming from mobile, but 2/3 of your conversions are coming but from desktop. You can see that mobile is gradually improving. This will include some apps as well in here, which obviously convert much higher. But generally, for a lot of sectors, mobile converts at about half that desktops and tablets. But as people get more and more traffic from social media and email, and the mobile sites get better, that conversion rate is increasing quite significantly on mobile. If it was twice as much, we would have only expected sort of 30% mobile conversions on revenue. This is search engine marketing share. This is the most recent data that I can find, that this was from Statistica. And you can see that in the UK, Google is 85%. MSN and Bing has grown considerably, and it's much higher on desktops and also much higher for a B2B or an older audience. So please don't ignore Bing. And also Bing is very high in different countries. So Europe has a much higher percentage of Google than maybe America or Asia, and particularly places like Germany that don't trust Google. So please consider Bing as well. And you'll notice that DuckDuckGo is starting to make an impression, and this is because of all the concerns about privacy. This is what happens on Google. What we find, this is work by Rand Fishkin and Jump Shot. Rand Fishkin was the finder of Moz, and what he is noticing that if you put a search term in Google, this is using tracking technology, over 50%, around 50% of them aren't actually going through to websites. Google's providing so much information now, or there's so many paid ads that the click-through rate has dropped significantly. And the reason this is really important is because even if you've got the same number of searches and you're number one and you were number one a year ago, the amount of clicks is going to be dropping all the time. So if you've seen a 10 to 20% drop in organic traffic, and you can use the tools like SEO Monitor to see whether there's been any increase in searches, you will see less traffic even though your positions have stayed the same. So this is why we track traffic and visibility and ranking separately, because otherwise you can't distinguish between the two. So a site could have improved rankings but actually dropped in traffic. So it's really important that you understand the difference. Also, it explains why paid traffic is so important in places like Google, particularly Google Shopping. But you'll notice that due to the European monopoly antitrust regulations, they've started to offer Google Shopping for free in the search results as well now at the top. So you just need to be aware of how the search results change and why Google search is so important for nearly every business. We tend to use that for the people that want to convert, and the people that aren't aware of you and are prospecting. That's where a lot of the paid social work that we do comes in, because then if they've engaged with you, we can then remarket to them. This gives you, now I want to refer you to the We Are Social Hootsuite report, which I use all the time. I'm just going to flash up some of the data from that. This is the online content activities. This was published in January 2020, but refers to last year's data. And this is the UK for this information UK. They have global information and country-specific information, and it includes all sorts of stuff about volume and size of markets. So if you're trying to export or you want to get into new markets, this is a really good resource for you to go to. You can see the most used social media platforms, and interest in YouTube is very high. TikTok is coming up rapidly in the UK because of everybody under 24 using TikTok. So I expect this to be completely different next year. Pinterest is still relatively low in the UK compared with the States, but that's growing well as well. What you'll notice, a lot of these are messenger apps like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. You'll probably see Teams coming in as well next year. This is quite dynamic. It does change year on year. We've also got Facebook reach. This is to illustrate the fact that even if you, and LinkedIn's the same, even if you post something to your organic followers, very, very few people actually see it, less than 5%. And if you look at that versus ad, 1 in 3 items in your feed will be ads now. So the amount of ads is really, really high. And if you want to get to new audiences or make an impression, you're going to have to use paid advertising rather than just relying on organic. Now, Instagram is a little bit better than that for reach and growing organically, but that's moving very quickly as well. This is social media audience profile by age. A lot of people say to me, oh, it's not worth advertising to over 55s. You can see that actually a lot of people over 55 and even over 65 are pretty active on Facebook, Instagram and Messenger. And this probably just reflects the size of these audiences anyway. So as a general rule, about 80% of each of these population groups are represented. And in fact, Facebook and Instagram are having a lower percentage in the younger generations because they've defaulted to Snapchat and more recently TikTok. Now, one of the things you'll notice is where the young generation, the older generation follow. And of course, although we think of these platforms as Facebook, as consumer platforms, we are all, even business owners are consumers. So you can still get to business owners through these Facebook targeting, because we can target on things like job title. This is to give you an indication of the size of the UK advertising market. It is now 57% of the total of all advertising in the UK. The biggest portion is still search at 6.6 billion. Overall, it grew by 15% last year. It is going to shrink next year. We already know that it's going to be lower than it was this year. And you've got some interesting stats in there. Paid social media is 23%. That comes into the display section. And videos, which covers in here, and both display and other, is 17%. So videos and social are the fastest growing proportion. Search is still growing, but as a proportion of the pie, it just sort of shrinks relative to the others. And classified is things like Gumtree and eBay. This is a little bit about some of the other things that happen. There's more automation going on. You need to be aware of things like integration, automated campaigns versus manual campaigns. We tend to find that you can just go on and create campaigns, but they're not necessarily as sophisticated. So this polarization between setting everything up yourself and just sticking it on automatic versus the sort of sophisticated stuff that we do. Lots of audience targeting, including search, Google Ads. You can now do audience targeting with programmatic TV, radio, etc. We've also got, while everything's automating, you've really got to find a way of standing out. So your creative assets are much more important. You can create video really nicely on a smartphone. If you go and look back a couple of webinars ago, Chris covered this. So you need to invest in your website and your ads. I'm really proud to announce we're just about to do our first TV ad on Sky Ad Smart. But we've had to update our website, which is going to go live next week, because our website didn't look as good anymore compared with our ad. So you can see that this is a constant fight to improve your website, to improve the conversions on your website. So this is what I was saying. A marketing plan is not just about getting traffic, it's all of this stuff as well. This is some benchmark data on what you can expect. I won't go through this. This is conversion rates. This is based on sessions. This is based on conversions using those same. This is the Wolfgang data again. And there are grants available. What I've got in a couple of weeks' time is I've got a finance webinar for the first time where we're talking about how you can release money or grow or get income to grow your business. and there are a load of grants available through, particularly in Leicestershire, but also in D2 and 2. But if anybody is interested in doing the project, there's grants, 35% grants, but there are some bigger grants as well. And typically, if you want to do a £5,000 project, we should be able to get a grant for you, particularly if you're in the East Midlands Chamber areas. The other thing I wanted to mention was all the privacy electronic rules, which I'm not going to go into today in too much detail, but we've had to address this by looking at alternatives to Google Analytics because of all the cookie rules that are changing, and also the fact that people like Apple started to delete cookies after 24 hours. The other browsers are now following. So we're actually working with a partner to produce, to work with a new type of analytics called Ringside, which uses first-party cookies. This is approximately £2,000 to £5,000 a month, but it's more similar to the paid analytics program, which is Analytics 360, which is 10 grand a month. And so you can see we're on a different sort of type of program here. As we get to 10 o'clock, I'm going to round up. I think this is the final one, just a little bit more on Ringside. So I just wanted to thank everybody for their attention today. If you go to handouts, you will see the slides and the A10. We are going to send the recordings around next week. Next week it's me again. I'm going to be talking about marketing automation software, CRM, which I think is really important for everybody, particularly if you're doing lead generation, but it does work with e-commerce as well. And I just wanted to quickly request a few reviews. I do apologize for the blatant request for a review, but I know that some of you have found these very, very useful. We would like to sort of try and get to 75 reviews, and we thought that we'd ask our lovely audience who come back and see us every time. So please click here, and you can sign up for a review. And if you missed that, it's pinned at the top right. I'll also just share the access to the training materials, which of course many of you have already got access, and that will allow you to go and sign up. It's taken us a little while longer because there's so many people requesting this, so you'll get that access next week. You'll receive emails with instructions on how to actually get access to the Academy site, and I think there's just a couple of links there. Obviously, the Anicca site and the Academy site. You can also book an hour of my time. Please don't book any time next week. I'm absolutely snowed. It's gone completely mad. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions, I think that I'm quite happy to stay around and answer some questions. The handouts are in the bit next to the chat where it says chat, QA, polls, handouts. If you click in there, you can go and click on and get those. If anybody else has got any questions, I'm quite happy to hang around, and hopefully you okay, that's not very useful. I will let me put the review link in there. That's me being rubbish. I do apologize for that. But thank you for going and how annoying. I'll stick it in the bottom here, but thank you for going and finding out for me. That's really kind of you. So yeah, there's the review. I could have guessed it was you, Darmini. There's the review there. Okay, let me just see if I have to post the handouts. I thought they were available to share, so apologies for that. Can somebody let me know whether you can see the handouts? Are the handouts now available? Could somebody just put in the chat whether the handouts are available, please? Excellent. I'm sorry nobody noticed that earlier on. I do apologise. Thank you, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar, and have a great weekend. I'm quite happy to stay here in case there's anybody else got any questions. Don't try and read it all at once. You might find it'll take you a little while. It's about 20,000 words. It took quite a long time to write, and a lot of work there. Looking forward to seeing you, Lee. It will be. I've got Monday morning off to recover from a very, very busy week. So I'll probably give you a call, but I'll speak to you on Monday afternoon. And if anybody else hasn't got any questions, I'm going to go and make myself a warm cup of tea because the other one's gone cold. Excellent. We'll speak to you all later. Thank you very much, everybody.